author and speaker.
Welcome. I'm Bonnie Liphart. You're watching Vision Plus. The good book says, without a vision, the people perish. And we have a way that you're going to be excited about, something that's happening good in our country. We hear so many horrible things, but there's a company in Washington, D.C. I actually went to college at Oxford Graduate School, and this guy helped me out a lot of times with computer and some other things. But he now has graduated with his doctorate and is working for Altorum Institute in Washington, D.C. Systems Research for Better Health. Doesn't that sound great? Well, let's find out about that. What is going on in our world? And I am so happy. Bill, welcome. Dr. Harms, welcome. And tell us a little bit about Altorum Institute.
Altorum Institute actually started off in about 60 years ago, helping the pilots learn to fly. We've been around in various locations for quite a while now. In the last 60 years, we've developed into about a 500-person company. We're actually in 6 different locations, and Washington, D.C. handles our behavioral sciences.
I think I've actually seen that building, if I'm not mistaken. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and I remember the behavioral science. So, okay, tell us about the latest thing that happened. I understand that I don't always get the B's and the M's right. The $1 billion or whatever that's been allocated for something. What is that?
Well, Altorum, as a research institute, works with the government. I think we're called think tanks and things like that. But we work with the government to actually help design policy and to create new practices that can be used in the sciences. Mm-hmm. And we have a very unique thing in our company. We invest in what we believe in. So as a federal contractor, we take about $8 million a year of our own money and we reinvest it in good research projects so that we can benefit society. We call those IRADs, Internal Research and Development. So a year ago, our company said, what would you like to do if you could change the world? And we created a project called the Veterans Transition Project, which has been very, very exciting. It works with some of the main issues that veterans are returning with. Almost 2 million veterans who've now served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Now, tell us a little bit about these returning veterans. I know I asked you if this could be possibly the FBI, the ones that worked in Afghanistan or other countries, if they could be helped. Because I did tell you about, there was a story of the one guy, there was a suicide bombing in Afghanistan, and a lot of people were killed, hurt, and he said that the brains of a baby was on his boots. And I can't tell that whole story, but he really came home as a shepherd in the church and like an elder, deacon, leader, and he has the post-traumatic stress syndrome, and not handling it well, and neither are the people around him. In fact, he resigned from his position at the church just because he couldn't handle everything. Tell me about some of your people.
That's tragic, but it's not an unusual story. About 43% of the 2 million people who are in Afghanistan and Iraq fighting the war are fighting a new type of war that we've never had before. 43% of the veterans, the people, the warriors who are there fighting, have been close enough to some type of explosion to knock them out. That causes traumatic brain injury. So of the 43% of the 2 million people that are over there fighting, we literally are looking at 700,000 people, veterans, returning who have brain injury, traumatic brain injury. Of those who have that traumatic brain injury, only about 7% of those are actually receiving treatment. It's because treatment is not diagnosed routinely, or it's not available routinely, or it's just not possible to access it. Or unfortunately, there's not enough of it to go around, and so we're treating only the worst cases. Of the 43% that are currently having problems, and the 7% of that are receiving treatment, 680,000 of those are back in the community, having no resources, having no access, and in many cases trying to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. That is a tough thing. Bootstraps don't work well when you have mental problems. When we're talking mental problems, this is not just a neural problem or not just a, I can fix myself. This is literally brain damage that has happened. And the brain damage is not something that ever heals. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is not something I can get over tomorrow. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is something that will be with me the rest of my life. I can learn to compensate. I can learn to work around it. I can learn to understand, and I can teach people to work with me. But I can't just take an aspirin and have it go away. So we are excited to be able to work with those veterans. We asked them a question. We said, what does it take to get better, and how can we support you in doing that? And then we looked at them and we said, what tools do you have available? And as we interviewed all of them, what we actually saw was they were all texting each other. They were using their cell phones. They were getting calls. They were very, very busy. Now, they couldn't meet our eyes. They couldn't have conversations with clinicians. They couldn't do anything else, but they were really good at texting. And so we got together as a group and we sat down and we said, what can we do? What can we do? And what ended up happening was that we created a technology using cell phones. We said exactly what we did initially. We sat down with them, we said, what can we do to help you? And they said, well, I don't know, I think I'm okay. And we, in the back of our head, said, well, we just talked to your clinicians and your public defender and your psychologist, and you're not doing okay. Do you remember that you had a problem yesterday? No, I don't remember having a problem yesterday. You see, traumatic brain injury causes memory loss. And so we've been trying to treat this group of people, thinking that we can ask them, we can bring them to the doctor and say, how are you doing? That's a normal question, that's the way we've always done business, but they can't remember. And so we find that we've given a whole bunch of treatment without having the basis.
Now, I understand that for a while they were sending them home for 90 days without even going through this challenge?
Well, there's some interesting challenges. This has been a very unique war, a very, very unique war in many ways. First of all, this is the greatest rollout of our reservists and of the National Guard that we've ever had in any conflict. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We're in a budget crisis. National Guard are less expensive to send to a war than regular soldiers. And so we can take them out and we can use them for 359 days, because if they're there for a year, they become a veteran and they have to have all kinds of things. We bring them back at 359 days and they don't qualify for veterans benefits. So we bring them back at 359 days, and then there was a very well-meaning law that was created that's called hands-off. For the first 90 days they return to the States. They're returned to their community, ostensibly to be with family and to recover. But what ends up happening is they come out of the battlefield after sleeping under a tank with all of their buddies, wondering whether they're going to live the next hour, and all of a sudden they're dropped off in Casper, Wyoming. Was that a friend? Was nobody there? And it literally is a black hole. They almost all have some kind of problem, even if they didn't have brain injury.
And just can't cope with the cultural shock of coming back to the United States, and I can't even comprehend what they must go through.
Absolutely. As I said, it's a very unique war. In the Second World War, people were able to sit on a ship for a month or 2 months and debrief a little bit and catch their breath. Or they would, in the other wars, there had been some time at least to be able to work through some of the issues. What is happening in Iraq and Afghanistan, because of the quick deployment, they literally can say, tomorrow you're going home, and 24 hours later they're sitting at their kitchen table, and everybody thinks that they're back as the same person, but they're not the same person.
I remember in the Second World War, I don't remember this, but I remember hearing about it. My husband, he wasn't a husband at the time, I'm 4 or 5 years old, but his brother was a prisoner of war in a German prison camp, and he lost from way over 200 pounds down to 79 pounds. And he said, don't feel sorry for me. I had no food, but neither did the guards. But they kept him 1 year before he was allowed to come home in a rehab place up in New York somewhere. So they used to do that. They used to have a time of getting acclimated to accept what's happened and maybe what's going to be happening back at home.
Well, the military still does. Military health systems are the best treatment in the world. They have absolutely phenomenal treatment. So this isn't a matter of not having the proper training or the desire or anything else. It's just a matter of how do you determine which of the 640,000 people who are coming back get treatment today. And of course they have to treat the worst ones, they have to treat the ones who are acute. And one of the things that's very slippery from a clinical perspective with post-traumatic stress or with traumatic brain injury is I can appear to be perfectly fine. It may not show up for 5 years. It may not show up for 5 days. Nobody knows. And when it shows up very acutely, and people don't know why it happened. And I, as a soldier, wouldn't know why it happened. I would be blaming myself.
In fact, the short-term memory would mean that everyone might think they're good today and they might not remember what happened the day before. Is that,
Absolutely.
That's that kind of what the Altarum, you say it again. Altarum Institute is about. Dr. Harms, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you implement.
Well, we found, number one, that, and we knew from research, that the fellows that we're working with did not have good memory recall. We knew that they used cell phones, and so when we sat down and asked them why they used their cell phones, they said, because it tells me what I have to do next. And we took a clue from that. So we created a research, a quasi-research design.
But you're not alone. You have some appointed.
I do. I have a very talented staff of people who work with me.
Over 100 people now.
Yes, sir. In our Veterans Division, there are well over 100 people. And we are working very closely with these guys to say, you tell us what you need. And so we are blending together science and technology and whatever is necessary to create a program. And the program we've created, the Veterans Transition to Society, is a program made just for them. We addressed a couple of things. We said, why can't you remember? What could you do to remember more? And they said, well, you need to ask us questions. So instead of giving the traditional treatment of giving them one assessment, asking them what's going on at the beginning of their treatment, months after something happens, we said, how about if we ask you at 10 o'clock, and maybe again at 1 today, and maybe again at 3, and 5 o'clock after supper, and tomorrow we'll give different times, but we'll ask you as you go. And so what we've done is we've created something called an ecological momentary assessment. Fancy word that just means that every day we ask them, how are you? Are you doing okay? What's going on today? How are you feeling? And we test things like anxiety and craving to see if they're having any substance abuse issues, or if they're having stress, or whether they're having problems with their family. We're checking clinical issues. And those pieces then are collected into a computer system. Very, very simply. We don't have to actually have anybody, a clinician, asking them the questions. We text them, they answer their text, it goes into the computer, and we have literally thousands of these events. Now, computers are wonderful because they can take those events and they can actually create a snapshot. They can create a conglomerate snapshot of what's going on in that veteran's life. That information then goes back to the clinical people, the clinician, the treatment, and they can see the whole person instead of just a snapshot at one point in time. So we're very, very excited about that, that our ecological momentary assessments are a new idea, and we are excited that they're working well with the veterans. They have a lot of promise in working in multiple areas, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, well, in fact, I was going to say, let's go ahead and just, in addition to the veterans, what do you see as something that could be, this could be applied? I watch my grandchildren, and they can text so fast. In fact, even when they're working on a computer, it sounds like this. Brrr. I think, how can you make any sense typing that fast? But they can, and they know what they're doing. And I would be in class teaching, and they'd be out there texting while I'm teaching. So I thought, why can't we figure out a way that the teacher texts to them the questions or the information? Can you see a wide variety of ways this could be used in the future?
This can be used in many, many areas. It could be used in criminal justice for people on probation. How are you doing? Did you remember to do something in lieu of the ankle bracelets and things that are locking them in? We could literally track them through their days and know what they're doing and give them the support instead of the punishment to try to force them to do something. It would work very, very well with geriatric. It would work extremely well with chronically ill, like people who have diabetes. Did you remember to take your medicine today? How are you doing? What's your sugar level? Are you strong? Are you feeling good? How about a cancer patient who is having the withdrawals from chemotherapy? We can actually get responses back to the clinicians immediately, all day long, all night long, on a random basis, asking any questions. Now, the wonderful thing about these EMAs is that it's not one set of questions that goes to everybody. It's a unique set of questions based on that client, because as we collect them, then we sort them out and say, Bill, you may need such and such a question, and Bonnie, you may need such and such a set of questions. So they're customized to each individual.
And then you don't have to have all these hundreds of people doing this. Seemed like it would save money in working this, but more importantly, it would help the person.
It helps the person, and it is very cost effective. There's another huge part of what we do, and that's using the cell phone actually to help the person once they leave treatment. So everything we've talked about so far is when I'm getting treatment and I know that I'm ill and that I know I have a problem or I know I need some help. We also then have another phase of this that we do when the person is supposedly healed or better, and we've all gone away from the doctor's office or the dentist's office and thought, I forgot to ask a question, or I wonder, I don't remember what they said, or that was 2 months ago. Do I still need to be doing the same things? These are all questions that we all ask ourselves, particularly people who are going through a trauma, a recovery from trauma. And so we use the cell phones uniquely again through this same interface. And the cell phone now tracks them for 18 months, 2 years, as long as is necessary, and continues to follow up treatment. During the ecological momentary assessments, we may have found out that at 4 o'clock every afternoon they have a bad time. So we have the ability through the cell phones to send them a picture. Wouldn't it be great to get a picture of my grandchild saying, I love you, Papa, at 3:45 if I know I'm going to hit a low every day at 4? Why not get a picture of my hunting dog running through the weeds? Or why not, if I'm a Marine, have the colonel say, or the commandant say, Semper Fi? Because sometimes that, for me, might be the thing that turns me around. I'm not the person, and each one is unique, and again, we can tailor this. Then we also have the reminder things. Did you remember your medication? Did you remember to tell your wife that you love her? Did you remember to say, whatever it is? And that's customized into each individual. And then the third thing that is very, very powerful in this is that we actually have a pain scale. Each time the person responds, it says, how are you doing, Bonnie? And they can rate from 1 to 9.
Oh.
If it's rating from 1 to, for instance, 4, then that will actually text a few of my friends and say, Bonnie's doing okay, you might want to give her a text message. But if I score from 4 to a 7, it's saying, Bonnie's having a tough day, would you give her a call? And so you all of a sudden, unbeknownst to you, get a call from 3 or 4 or 5 of your friends saying, hey, how are you doing today? And then if it actually goes up higher, a 6 or a 7, depending on how it does it, it actually calls the doctor's office. It may call the person at the front desk just to call and say, hey, this is Justice checking in. Are you doing okay today? Or it may actually emergency dial your clinician, and it would actually text message to them and say, Bill is having a problem right now. Now, we had that happen. In our test suite, when we were actually creating this program, one of the guys who was testing it, this was a fellow who was already back at home working. He was doing well. Everything seemed to be going fine. He was father. Everything was everything looked good. And he had an anxiety attack. We don't know what caused it. And he was found actually laying in a parking lot vomiting uncontrollably. The anxiety was so bad that it had totally collapsed him. But he had enough wherewithal still to grab his phone, and he hit the high number. And that immediately called his clinician in California. The clinician was on the phone with him immediately and actually talked the emergency technicians through what was going on. They got him to an emergency room, gave him an anti-anxiolytic. They gave him a shot. He actually relaxed a little bit. Everything was fine. He went home and had supper and went to work again the next day. That saved him from suicide. It saved him from another stint in a mental hospital or being a John Doe on the street, being picked up by the police and not knowing what was going on.
It's so exciting what's going on. What is the possibility that any of our viewers could text somewhere or go online and see if there's any way that they could learn more about it?
Well, Altarum Institute is www.altarum.org. And you can actually use Veterans Transition, or you can type in the word IRAD in our search engine and it will pop up some information sheets on what's going on. My name again is Bill Harms, and you can email me at bill.harms@altarum.org. Altarum is ALTARUM. And that will come directly to me, and I can send you information packets and things along those lines. We being Altarum, are actually looking for other sites that we can test this in. We're currently working very strongly with the military. We're excited about what's going on there, but we would like to look at other countries. We'd like to look at other states. We'd like to look at different age groups. We'd like to look at different diseases and be able to partner with people and agencies and different funding agencies to see what we could do to actually implement this and adapt it to different arenas.
Oh, that is so exciting. It just feels like there's so much hope in what Altarum
Yes.
Institute is doing, and Dr. Bill Harms is part of that. Bill.Harms@Altarum.
Altarum.org.
I could remember that. Altarum, ALTARUM. It's all tar. Oh, there you go. And .org, gotta remember it's .org.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so they could email you and that could start. So you're looking at are you thinking about like when the FBI come home maybe, or the work over in Greece, or what are you thinking about? What's some possibility? Surely you have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, and
We do. I'm not sure that we've formulated exactly all the steps in the plan at this point. We are currently negotiating and figuring out different areas that we can go into.
different areas of the country or other countries?
Thank you for that question. Both. Different areas as far as disciplines. It would work very well, as I said, in criminal justice. It would work very well in chronic illness. It would work very well in geriatrics.
Mm-hmm. What about that just opens so many more questions I'd like to ask, but what about the colleges and institutions? I'm thinking about ITT Institute in Huntsville that has a criminal justice department. Virginia College has a criminal justice department. Maybe they could partner with someone to, an education to study. I know you were talking with a few educators and the president of the college and so forth. So what might come out of this? Give me some other ideas.
Well, Altarum is actually a research institute, and we
Right.
have a lot of researchers that work internally. So what we actually are looking to do is partner with opportunities. We're looking at how can we work with a cancer institute, how can we work with somebody that is working through criminal justice or working through. At this point, we have our own internal training. This could very easily turn into an industry, and at that point, ITT and different agencies that actually are training people would be very, very appropriate. The data that we've collected and the data that we'll continue to collect has, at the risk of being trite, unlimited potential. We very possibly will be able to say this type of treatment is more effective for those who came from Afghanistan versus Iraq. This type of treatment is more effective for a male versus a female, or a male who has an education, or whatever is necessary. We can customize and actually be able to track back. One of the things we're very excited about is traditional treatment uses an assessment. When you initially go into the doctor, they ask you questions, they fill in different questionnaires, and from that they determine what type of treatment. This will actually allow us to go back and assess whether the assessments worked. We don't know how well those are working. We're doing our best science, but this will actually be able to verify what part of that assessment actually was most effective for that person or for that part of the group. So we're excited about the research end of it as well.
Maybe you can take it from doctor to doctor, because every time you turn around, you got to fill out all those forms again. That might not work. But.
Well, it's actually an interesting thing that you say, because for the technical people that are watching, one of the things that we were able to do through this is we've actually been able to meet all of the federal rights to privacy, HIPAA, 42 CFR, 45 CFR, 25 CFR, all of those massive government regulations that says we are protecting your privacy, but within that protection, we can now share whatever pieces of data you tell us we need to share.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
You know, because you write it out once, then you go to the next doctor, because they send you to a specialist, which sends you to somebody else, whatever, and you got to do the same thing. And you could easily say, please give them my address and phone number and whatever, you know, and that you wouldn't have to sit there and fill that. But this is so exciting. I feel like I've gone to Mars and Jupiter just hearing you talk about all of this, Dr. Harms. So what is your greatest need right this moment?
More places to test.
More places
More
to test.
opportunities to actually, and agencies that are willing to say, let's give this a shot
Mhm.
and see how it works.
Okay, so the Cancer Institute or something
Yes.
like that. Mhm. And what is your job, Dr. Harms, in all of this?
I'm the principal investigator, which means I've designed the actual program itself and how it's implemented, and then I supervise all of the research and collect the data and do the analysis, and I sort of am the man who points in all the different directions and says, you do this, you do that.
I really think that is exciting, and to think we were right here in school with you and didn't know you had, well, we knew you had a lot of brains, because you were the go-to man for everything we needed to get through our doctorate, and I appreciate all you did. But how'd you happen to get this position? How'd that come about?
Actually, we have it's a long story. I was actually the national director for a substance abuse treatment program, working with faith-based groups and with family-oriented care. And that was through SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, in a program called Access to Recovery. And we were working with the groups and maintaining and supporting them. And the person who was in the office next to me, Jamie Davis, Dr. Davis, who works for the VA now, said, wouldn't it be fun, we were at the water cooler, and we said, wouldn't it be fun if we could do this? And we had that opportunity. So we wrote a proposal and the company funded it.
Well, I know we just have seconds left maybe, but tell me a little about where you're from. We didn't get any of your background information.
I'm from everywhere.
Okay.
I was actually born and raised in Wyoming. My father was an expat, so we worked in the oil business, and every 2 years we moved to a different country, and then 2 years later we would move back to Wyoming and catch our breath and then head out again. So we've had the opportunity to be around the world.
So that's why you're so comfortable with all of this and thinking globally instead of one little place. So your daddy got you ready for this.
He was a wonderful man and gave me a tremendous amount of opportunity. But you bring up a good point. The opportunity that this has brought about is because we have a team of people. We have a team of very amazing partners. We're working with a company called LifeWire out of Toronto, Canada, who has actually opened up the Canadian market for us. They developed the cell phone technology and the interface. We're working with a company called Brain Checkers, who developed all of the technology to put this on a PDA. We're working with the incredible clinicians at the Pathway Home, which is the clinic in California that's actually taking these fellows. The Pathway is a very unique opportunity because, or for these guys, it's the treatment center of last resort. It means they've already washed out of the VA center. It means they've already washed out of every other treatment. In many cases, this is their last resort before prison, and this has helped them turn their lives around.
And I heard you say faith-based in one of the sentences.
Yes, it is. The Pathway Home actually is very interested in doing additional research, and we are collecting some data so that we can actually analyze how much difference the spiritual element makes. In most of our cases, we're Christian, and that happens to be God and Jesus. In some cases, our soldiers are not, and the Pathway Home has made that possible, equal treatment, believing that God is strong enough to sort us all out for every different religion that's out there.